Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. You may have heard that Black wealth will be zero by 2053. Well, a part of that reason is that generational wealth is not being passed down. It's as if the money is going into a black hole. And that has to do with the fact that for so many families, there isn't something in place that dictates what happens to the wealth that is present in the Black community because there isn't a will. And I'll be the first one to say that I actually don't have a will for myself. That is an objective, that is a goal of mine to have for 2023. But here's the thing, there's $68 trillion of wealth that's going to be passed down in the next 25 years. And so many of us will be left out of that transfer of wealth. And it has to do with not having a will in place, not having the proper estate planning. Believe it or not, Chadwick Boseman didn't have a will when he died, Aretha Franklin didn't have a will, and Prince didn't have a will. And I don't think many people think about it because it's not just the Black community, but people in general. Only 33% of people have a will set up. But here's the thing, the wealth gap, and a part of the reason why it's not closing is because the wealth is not being passed down to the next generation. So this is a way that we can actually close the wealth gap, is by having a will in place if you have assets. When we talk about the $68 trillion that's going to be passed down over the next 25 years that some of us may miss out on, it's like, well, how can this happen? Well, have you guys seen, I remember watching movies back in the day, and sometimes in the movies you would see a scene where there would be a house in the family and the house would get taken away from the family. It would be in the family for generations or maybe one generation, and it would just get taken away from the family, or land would be taken away from the family. This is a part of how it happens. When there's no estate planning, the property, the land goes to the state, and then you have to go to probate court and pay about 3 to 8% of the estate to get it back and go through so much hassle, right? There may be property that was in the family for a generation or for generations, but there's no person appointed to pay the mortgage, to pay the taxes after that person has passed on. And best case scenario is that that property or that home is left in disrepair, or worst case scenario is it falls out of the hands of that family. So that number, zero net worth by 2053, that actually came about from a survey done from the Federal Reserve in 2019. But this wasn't during the pandemic. So this was pre-pandemic. Once the pandemic hit, the pandemic disproportionately affected the Black community's wealth. So now that number of 2053 is actually much closer than we think. In the article that I read, they stated that we are in a state of emergency now, that 2053 is not the number anymore because the timeline has been accelerated based on the pandemic happening, which created more disparity in the wealth gap. So it's not something that's so far away, it's here, it's now, the opportunity is now for us to do something about it. And you may say, well, I'm too young, I don't have any assets, what would I need a will for? I don't have a family yet. Well, if you have any assets, even if you're 18 years old, if you have any assets, then you have something to protect, something to pass down. And your will is not something that just stays static and you don't touch it for the rest of your life. No, you're updating it as life goes on, as you start to have a family, as your wealth starts to grow, but at least it's something that you can put in place now as the first step to protecting your wealth and being able to pass it down to future generations. I actually just recently looked up on Google estate planning attorneys in my area. I read the reviews, I made a couple of phone calls, left some messages, and I'm in the process of doing that now. So I encourage you all to, hey, check out Google and look up some estate planning attorneys in your area and just make the phone call as a first step to just getting some information about it. So I hope that you all enjoyed this, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video.